same sign. Motion carries. And I will just note, we did not have any visitors for the open forum. See on the agenda here, but we are moving on. This evening we do have a number of reports. And it looks like, Mr. Stump, are we starting with the budget
Yes.
revision report? Okay.
Our Finance Director Heidi Hagen is online and will walk through the finance report. Some of the numbers may be hard to see from where you are, but all materials are online. Turn it over to Heidi.
Good evening. Thank you. As Mr. Stump noted, I'm Heidi Hagen, the Finance Director for the school district. And tonight we're going to take a look at the fiscal year 25 recommended budget revision for all funds. Most of you are familiar with seeing this information. We generally do a budget revision consideration around this time of year. I've worked in partnership with Kurt and principals and other directors to review current year-to-date information, both revenue and expense, and consider any trends that are showing to come up with the recommended budget revision. So I start with the general fund. That's the largest of the overall total budget in the school district. General fund, just as a high-level summary, includes Fund 1, Fund 8, which is our scholarship fund, and Fund 9, which is student activities. I'll get to the numbers on the next slide, but I wanted to share with you, in looking at the revenue, the revisions that are taking and or impacting the overall original budget is the biggest consideration, the reduction in our student enrollment. We had budgeted 1,746 kindergarten through 12th grade students. We're currently sitting at 1,693, and that impacts the total revenue we receive from state based on the per pupil funding formula. We also are familiar with and usually see special education adjustments, as our revenue is based on actual results from the previous 2 fiscal years. So we'll be looking at a revision due to that. In addition to the original budget, we were not including any of the READ Act funds, as legislature had not yet determined what that would look like. Now we know what those funding sources and amounts are, in addition to the unemployment funds for non-licensed staff that receive benefits between terms, which is through the summer months. Again, we were unsure as to what funding sources would be available, given the state intends to provide revenue up until there's no longer any funds remaining. And we know that for the second year of the mandate, the state does have sufficient funds to cover this year's unemployment. In addition, we drill down all of the expenses in the various categories. Our largest is salaries and wages. And in addition to that, benefits. There were some teacher ads based on staff shifting, and also ads to elementary classroom section. We also hired a long-term sub for special education, and a review at actual payroll for our transportation salaries and wages noted that a revision would be needed. Benefits, we have since instituted a retirement incentive, so I've included that. Our health insurance has increased overall based on recent contract negotiations. Both non-licensed and teacher contracts did include an increase in the family district benefit, and our unemployment expenses are known at this time. Fees for service, we track PSEO. That has continuously increased year over year and is impacting the budget revision. Utilities, an uncontrollable cost. We try to do our best in projecting what that might look like, and a budget revision supports the changes there. also of contracted workers. And so we've since changed from independent contractors to paying our refs and other athletics and activities support workers through a different process, and that has also impacted the overall budget. Supplies, we have the opportunity to reconsider how and when we purchase our Chromebooks, so that's impacting the expense budget. Capital, the playground quote has come in less than what was projected, and I've included a food service chargeback, which is allowed by state statute through MDE, which was not included on the original budget.
Heidi, can I stop you for 1 second? I know we'll maybe take questions, but I just want to make sure we have a common understanding. In the last slide at the beginning, you said we added an elementary class section, and I don't believe that's accurate. I think we shifted staff and now have the accurate numbers for salaries and benefits for all new teachers. One of them happened to be an elementary teacher, but that was not a section add, I believe.
Right, sorry, that was a misspeak on my part. Correct. We hired just before the school year to address the staffing shifts,
Yes.
which wasn't accounted for in the original budget. Correct. Thank you for clarifying that. So then this is the look at revenues and expenses for the general fund. You can see historical information from left to right, the original budget that the board approved in June of '24. That in comparison to what the recommendation is for the revised fiscal year '25 budget. Overall, a slight increase in revenue, again, based on offsetting student decrease in enrollment with those other categorical revenue changes of about 78,000, and a slight increase, less than 1% in the overall expense budget, mainly accounting for salaries, wages, and benefit changes. With end result of expenses exceeding revenues by $396,192. The majority of that comes in the form of our restricted long-term facilities maintenance projects for the chiller at the Eagleville Elementary. This is a look at the various categories of and types of funds. Overall, we track restricted revenues, which can only be revenues and expenses, which can only be spent on certain eligible expenses per statute. And then we have what's left over is in the unassigned fund balance. Board policy is 15%. We've steadily met the board policy year over year, and this budget revision also meets the 15% unassigned fund balance with the opportunity to set aside funds for future needs in those assigned fund balance categories. So the unassigned fund balance is just over 3.7 million, projected at 15%. Moving on to food service, again, looking revenue and expense. Current trends show that student and adult purchases are trending above the original budget, as are what accounts for the revenue coming in for those purchases and the reimbursement rates, and looking at historical trends, adjusting the revised budget accordingly. Some expense increases and or changes would be in benefits, again, the health insurance, contract negotiations, and participation in the health insurance benefit. There are less repairs and or maintenance needs as of the current year-to-date food service department, and legislation changed the option for food service to be able to use funds to purchase lunch tables, and so therefore we did move forward with purchasing lunch tables. And then again, that general fund chargeback, which is allowed by state statute to account for general fund support and service in the food service department. This is looking at the overall food service Historical data, again, blue is the original budget approved by the board. Revised budget is there. Overall, we're looking at higher percentage increases in comparison to the original budget, but making note that the reason for that is the total overall budget is considerably smaller. So looking at about an $80,000 net surplus, resulting in a fund balance in the food service fund above the 6 months threshold of about $100,000. And so working to continue to spend down the food service fund balance in ways that are eligible and track future revenues and expenses going forward. Community education budget, again, revenue and expense. Overall programs, including Kid Connection, are tracking ahead of budget, so we revised revenue accordingly. And likewise, increase in program participation results in impacts in program expenses, specifically in the fees for service. Community ed budget is tracking to have revenue exceed total expense by about $14,000, noting that we have been conservative in projecting this year's even revised budget, but the likelihood is would maybe see results similar to fiscal year 24. Again, small increases in areas such as salaries, wages, and employee benefits, and then most of the increase is shown in the fees for service. And that is in conjunction with increased program participation and the need to also adjust those expenses. I did not include Fund 6, which is our construction fund. That is not being revised at this time because it's based on the board approved action of the long-term facilities maintenance bond, which was $2.1 million and driven by board approval and statute. And I did not include Fund 7, which is our debt service fund, showing a slight increase in revenue. Our expenses stayed the same based again on statute and associated debt that the district has. So overall, the revised budget is mostly adjusting to current year-to-date numbers and adjusting for any areas where revenue increased the needs to increase expense. Questions?
Heidi, or Madam Chair, can I make a couple comments before we open for questions? Thank you, Heidi. Hopefully, at the beginning of this year when we were down 40 students, wasn't sure how this was going to play out even mid-year. So I want to thank Heidi, our staff, and our budget managers for their work on this. A couple comments then. As you heard, chiller was in our budget, and just to give you a quick update, we did the bidding in last, I don't know, it was August or July even. Actually, that unit is now completed, which is ahead of schedule, and walk through tomorrow. So hopefully it can be even put in before May this year. So we also talked about cost containment in September. Remember, we talked as a board there, sent out an email to our staff, and when you operate on in 10th lowest district in the state for pupil funding, we're always in like cost containment mode. But I do want to highlight a couple things. We have done some things to ensure that we stay within our budget. As far as transportation goes, a combined bus route, that was on your list of things that we're looking at. We have evaluated staffing. We've looked at our subs and compared month over month and ensured we knew what we were doing in terms of substitutes needed and where we're filling positions. And then breaking news, it's just like in lead up to our next session, Aaron Nelson, high school principal, will be talking about PSEO and CIS. So him and his staff, counselors, Allie Ross and Chris Palmer, met with students basically spent a couple days doing it and saved our district $50,000. And by giving students the same classes, but with our teachers. And he'll get into it more, but I'm just saying, a lot goes on behind the scenes, not just like, here's a budget and we end up being okay. There's many things that happen to ensure that we try to stay on task, so I just want to recognize our staff for their work. Those are my comments.
Yeah, Mr. Stump, just a question, since this is a budget revision, how many more times for the public and the board will the budget be revised throughout this year? Is this it?
We've done one budget revision per year. I guess if Heidi and I are seeing more extremes, some things came in that we weren't really expecting, and there is going to be a lot of change, might come back to this board in, April or May, but usually it's one budget revision.
Perfect. We're just resetting what we approved back in June, correct? Okay. I'll open it up to the board for questions.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Stump, you said, I think there was 47 we were behind with enrollment at the beginning of the year, right? Was that the number?
53.
It's 53 now.
Somewhere
Yeah.
around there.
I
Do
think
we
it's 40.
have any obviously the 6 students added, is there a trend in class or grade, or is it all over the board?
I would say, yeah, each building has some nuances, yeah.
Other questions? Okay.
My only other two highlights then,
Yep.
if you don't have questions. Again, some of that was REDAC, one-time funding. We have an MOU with our teachers union for letters, training. Some of it was for curriculum specifically in relation to the REDAC. So some of that was one-time funding. And as you notice, we have an assigned fund for technology. So even though we don't have to order Chromebooks this year, which is a cost savings of a couple $100,000, we're still setting aside hundred and some $1,000 for that expense, because if you don't do that next year, all of a sudden we have an extra couple $100,000 line item that we didn't have the year before. So if you can do it in a strategic way year by year, so it's not just a big hit one year, and you gotta make different changes. So I think we're trying to be strategic in how we go about this as well.
Thank you. Okay, if no further questions, if anyone on the board does have further questions, follow up with Mr. Stump after tonight. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, good evening, have a good night.
You too.
Okay, we'll move on to the student council report. Ryder, are you doing that tonight? Okay.
Well, we're in the middle of planning snow days, that'll be next week, and then next Saturday is the dance, Legacy Pavilion at Cragen's. We have the Pep Fest like usual, no powder puff or powder buff, we don't do that for snow days. I don't know, if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them, but just lots of planning snow days right now.
Any questions for Ryder? All right, and I'm assuming students are supposed to get tickets for that? snow days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, we sell them online, so,
Awesome.
the 8th.
All right, have fun, good luck. Thank you. All right, is this Mr. Nelson, are you coming up? All right, we now have our PSEO presentation. I know we have a number, just for the board, we have a number of presentations coming up next. Let's try to let our presenters kind of get through them, write questions down, and we'll kind of come back to questions at the end.
Before Mr. Nelson takes over, I do have a couple brief comments to make. Aaron Nelson, Mr. Nelson, by de facto, has sort of become the leader in PSEO, not for any other reason, because he does want to be part of a solution, and he wants to ensure our kids have the best experience possible. So you saw him testify at the state legislature. We've been on both a group with local school districts and trying to figure this out, and I can tell you, we're far ahead of other school districts in what we offer and what we do for our students, and it's because of his leadership. And he's also presenting at the Secondary School Principals Association Conference next week. And we are better off in our system because of his leadership. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing I want to say is he's spent, I'm not kidding you, probably 40 hours minimum just on this subject. So there might be times where you ask a question that gets really into the weeds, and we might give you a simplified version, or we might say, you know what, it might be better if we dig into this at a later time in a one-to-one conversation or come back to this next time, just because there is so many nuances to this. So there might be some of those concepts brought up. Without that, I'll turn it over to Mr.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Mr. Stump. I'll sign autographs later.
Yeah.
This certainly is a complex subject that on the surface for students and parents seems rather simplified, and as you start to dig below it, to earn college credit in high school, there's a wide variety of ways. So this is I've been trying to think of a good example. This is gonna be a crude example. Today we had orange chicken at lunch. It's a popular one for students, okay? And I guarantee you we had 90% of our students eating orange chicken, right? You can imagine to organize a lunch like that and to have that option, all the kids love it. There's other meals that aren't quite so popular. And if we were to have the opportunity for kids to have to come in and choose in our cafeteria, say, well, I don't like orange chicken, but instead I want something from Noodles and Company, or I want something from Pizza Hut or Subway or whatever. Those individual options begin to add cost to the district as we try to funnel it towards individual needs versus something that's suitable for a large group. And that's a really crude example, but a little bit of an example of where PSEO and CIS come in. So the PSEO option is legislation was passed late 80s, early 90s, I'm not sure the exact time, it was prior to my professional role here in Minnesota, but it's been around for a long time. And this option allows kids, high school age students, to enroll in a college class directly with the college, so university or college. And they take those classes. Originally it was set up that if there was extra seats available, they could fill those seats. Now colleges essentially plan courses around this idea, knowing that there's gonna be a PSEO enrollment. And so they take those classes directly, they register for them as they would a college student, and then there's two methods. I didn't list both of those on there. Pam had asked a question by email tonight, I answered it. There's actually two methods that those are paid for. MDE, if a student enrolls half through a college in PSEO and half through the high school, MDE could fund it by giving half of the student funding to the college, and then half of that would go to the high school. That is one method. More commonly, high schools like ourselves, we enter a contract with the college to offer PSEO, and then they bill us on a tuition rate. Right now, that's the method we're using, and many schools, almost all schools in our area are using, and it's $261 per credit hour. So we don't limit it, we can't limit it. It is entirely a wide open channel. Anybody who qualifies for those courses can take those courses and take any courses that they want, and we pay the tuition. College in the schools is working with the same post-secondary institutions, so colleges and universities, and these are taught by high school instructors. So high school instructors who meet the college certification, so they have a master's degree and 18 college credits in a specific content area. So graduate credits, not just college credits, but graduate credits. And those teachers are considered to be highly qualified in that area by the colleges and certified so that they can teach that course in the high school to high school students. And then we pay a flat fee for that. In this case, I think this number is changing, so if you hear me say 3,000 or 3,300, I'm referring to the same number. That's actually set by, I believe it's OHE or the Office of Higher Education or MDE, one of the two has established that number. So when I use this term 3,000 or 3,300, it has always been 33 and most recently went to 3,000. I don't know if it's going to be permanently there or not. But I pay for that course for that instructor. So if a teacher A, teaches, let's say a high school geometry class for college credit, I can have as many students enrolled in that and the cost never changes. It's $3,300. PSEO, individual students choose. It's not really through us. They go directly through the college. They get to choose the courses that they want, kind of a wide open array. Here, who we have as certified instructors is the courses we can offer. Traditionally, PSEO has been an option for students who haven't been closely connected with the school, because prior to 2020, most of the PSEO options were on-campus options. There was some online, it was very limited, most of them were on campus. And students who didn't feel like they had a connection with the high school, some students who were very much career focused and saying, hey, I want a fast track on this, students looking for AA degrees, that was more commonly the route that they chose. This year we had 8 full-time PSEO students. And that's what the F24 is, fall of 24. We had 49 students that chose at least one PSEO course in the fall of 2024. Our CIS options are more commonly selected by students that are wanting to stay within the school community. They enjoy their time here on campus, they like to see their friends, they are connected with the school culture, and more importantly have a connection with teachers, or prefer to be in class and see the teachers face to face. We had 174 students enrolled with at least one CIS course, and we are currently the second largest partner school with Central Lakes College. That's where we offer our credits through. I want to break this down in numbers. This is a presentation I gave to our student body. I had previously given the presentation to our Student Leadership Council and got some really good feedback about it. The economics behind PSEO and CIS. On the surface, families and students would just look at an option for college credits. Behind the scenes, how it's funded goes back to that cafeteria example. PSEO cost us $261 a credit. In the fall of 2024, our total credits for PSEO was 427 credits. That's a cost of $111,000. So that's $111,000 that we wrote a check to CLC for one semester of schooling. This is an old number here in the far right, spring of 2025, total credits of 524. That was the number in November when I was presenting to students. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what we did to address that number. That goes back to the cost savings that Kurt talked about earlier. Now look at the financial implications of CIS. The cost per course is $3,300. In fall of 2024, we had over 150 students. The actual number is 174 students. A total cost of $45,000. In spring of 2025, our total cost for CIS will be $60,000. That's because we added some new courses, and I'm going to show you that in just a little bit. So 174 students at $45,000 of cost in the fall of 2024. I'll jump back one slide. If you remember earlier, 49 students participating for a cost of $111,000. 49 students, $111,000, 174 students, $45,000. You're starting to see the difference. Behind the scenes, this is a really, really big expense for schools throughout outstate Minnesota. So I'm just going to throw it up here. So this, in the course of one single year, PSEO will have a cost of around $250,000 to our district. A check that we would write, $250,000 to CLC for those credits. We would service 174 students in each semester, 3,000, 4,000, somewhere in that neighborhood of credits earned, and the cost would be $105,000 with CIS. So substantially reduced cost per credit if we offer it through our teachers here. So I'm just going to take a step back. In 2018, I advocated to the board to consider investing in teachers earning their credentials to teach CIS credits. And the board responded saying, yes, we'll do that. We'll establish protocol by which, with administrative approval, a student could go, or a teacher could go and earn their 18 credits in a content area, and the district would reimburse them for the cost of that expense. And because of that, we've been able to expand our college credit offerings. In the fall of 2024, we offer 105 college credits on our campus, okay? That's a really, really, really big number. And Pequot Lake sits in a really unique spot in that we have so many college credit offerings. I'm gonna talk about how this happened, but I'm gonna show you a couple things with economics. I had earlier up there 524 credits for the spring of 2025. We have successfully reduced that. Under 330, I don't have the final number only because registration is not, I mean, it's completed, but the numbers haven't come back to us from CLC. But we're under 330 credits for a reduction of $50,600, somewhere in that neighborhood. Of expense to our district that we reduced. By increasing our CIS offerings, we've been able to reduce some of our PSEO expenses. And I'll show you a little bit how we did that and why that hadn't been pursued earlier. We're now gonna offer, in the spring of 2025, we'll have 117 credits at Pequot Lakes High School that are available to our students for options. Here's the historical enrollment. So I'm just choosing Pequot Lakes. In the fall of 2022, we had 37 students enrolled with choosing credit options of 294 credits. And then if you just track across there, you can see spring of 23, 41 students, 286 credits. And then if you jump over here, you can see the number was, let's say close to 300, jumped up to 427. That big jump is mirrored in outstate Minnesota. Lots and lots and lots of districts have seen a huge jump, especially fall of 24, 25, with their student enrollment in PSEO options. And so lots of districts are suddenly going, what in the world is going on? This is really, really expensive to offer these individual choice options versus a larger cafeteria where we've got this class, we can service lots of students at a low cost option. So what's going on? In the minds of a lot of students and families, PSEO has some advantages, and I want to make sure I call those out. They see the advantage of flexibility. So online courses offer flexibility. A student would not have to be on campus to take that class. I could earn that credit, never having to attend campus for that period of time, which a lot of our students really like. And when I showed you earlier, there's 49 students taking at least one PSEO class. Most of the students are choosing that because of that option, the flexibility. Courses specific to a personal plan. We do have students that are looking to go into some sort of a degree field or post-secondary option that's fairly specific, and they could then take, because we don't offer, let's say we don't offer philosophy, or we don't offer organic chemistry, or we don't offer, but they could go to a post-secondary provider and choose that one course, which would help them with their academic planning. And I would say there's a significant number of students who have looked at that as a way to try to get the courses specific that they want. It also has a shorter academic window. PSEO starts typically a week or two before our school does, and sometime in late August, and then will end in early December. So it's got a shorter window of time in which students are required to do the work. Some students see that as an advantage. There are advantages to college in the schools. The courses follow our high school academic calendar, which is an advantage. When we have a spring break, you also have spring break in your college class. Familiarity with the teacher. That teacher's on campus. They've either had classes with them before, or a sibling has had a class with them before, or most importantly, they can come in and talk to that teacher face to face, which typically students recognize as well. Electronic communication doesn't always get you to where you need to be. Our PLHS policies apply, and there has been times in which the difference between a college policy and the high school policy is not easily mitigated in a PSEO option, but we always, the CIS is always going to follow the PLHS policy. So when there's conflict, we follow what Pequot Lakes High School policy says. Certainly is increased support. You have access on campus to the teachers, and then in-person instruction, which a number of our students have indicated, yeah, I like online, but I'm not an online student. I would much prefer in-person, and that's what our CIS would offer. We have definitely moved in a direction, I'm going to show you just a little bit, to increase some flexibility. But I think this is incredibly important. this is the only thing that matters, I think, to parents and teachers is that a valid college credit? And the PSEO credit earned, or the CIS credit earned, are the exact same credit from the same institution, from CLC. One of the things that happened, I'm gonna jump to this and I'll go back a couple of slides. One of the things that happened is we have had a lot of students at Pequot Lake Schools who have been seeking an AA degree. And an AA degree is an Associates of Arts, and if you earn that 60 credits, 64 credits, whatever that exact number is, you can earn Associates of Arts degree, and some students see that as an advantage. Counselors and I would advise that it's not always the best option for every student, but there's a lot of students who see that as a way to sort of encapsulate college credits into a degree program that makes it more universally acceptable no matter where they apply to. Now that's not always true, it's sometimes a fallacy associated with that, but this is a popular option here at Pequot Lake Schools, and in that way we're unique to lots of other schools in the area. We have lots of students choosing the AA degree. Prior to November 2024, we operated under the premise, and this was an established policy by CLC, that students who are earning their AA degree had to have 15 credits taken from a teacher at the CLC campus. So whether that be a PSEO class or they drive down to campus and take the class in person, they had to have 15 credits of this AA degree from the campus. This was definitely hamstringing us in some ways. So we had a lot of students choosing the AA degree, take the number of students. I think we were at 30, I think it's 35 students that between grades 11 and 12 that are looking at an AA degree, take 35 times 15. That's how many credits had to be PSEO. So I called CLC last fall, we had a long conversation, and I expressed my frustration with that policy and received an email a couple of days later saying, oh, we changed that a couple of years ago, that is no longer required. All right, so now we're November of 2024. So we made the decision in early December that we're just gonna go ahead and offer. There are courses we just have never offered because they had to take them from CLC anyway, and so we didn't go, here's the 15 credits that you take from CLC. We've absorbed those classes and we've created CIS options. So now a student could earn their AA degree and never take a class PSU. So they can earn the AA degree entirely through all of our CIS offerings. Because we did that, a lot of students were able to make changes, and I'll go back here and I'm going to show you those new course offerings. So we have, on the left there, added all those courses which hit specific goal areas within the AA degree. And we've begun to offer, if you look over here on the right, we've increased the flexibility. So when I talk to students, a lot of students had said, you know what, PSEO, the great thing about it is it offers me flexibility. If I'm on a vacation or if I've got stuff going on for the week, since some students are very, very busy with athletics, I can plan ahead, I have flexibility, I don't have to be in class 5 days a week. So we've responded by increasing the flexibility of our CIS offerings. So we are offering some classes hybrid, which means there will be an in-class meeting every week, but it could be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, depends on the flexibility of the teacher. Meaning that some of your work is online, instruction and teacher support is in person. We also are offering online courses. There are a few students that really like the online environment, and so we have some courses that we have added for spring of 2025 that are 100% online, meaning that students aren't required weekly to be in a physical class. Just going to double check here if I had anything else for you. Not those two. Okay. Coming back to the advantages of CIS, so one of the things I talk with our students about is, you know, obviously my motivation is to keep our staffing and our elective options. I can't run the high school with students saying, I want what I want, and then me paying top dollar for it, when I can offer the same exact credit with one of our teachers at a greatly reduced rate. So how do I encourage students to come and take the option that is the same course, same number of credits, same obligations, but take it at a financially much reduced rate, and a course that's offered by our teachers, and then supports overall our ability to continue to offer those offerings every single year. So with our increased flexibility and online options, with the familiar instructors who are accessible throughout the day, with increased course options to meet individual needs, and with better monitoring and support within our CS offerings, we believe that this option here hits the attractiveness of the flexibility of PSEO, the online of some of those classes, and gives our students a better educational experience than some of our PSEO courses. One of the things I mentioned, and I'm gonna bring it up here, there is a real negative that we've experienced with PSEO. We can't control what happens there. In that marketplace for PSEO, some students see it as, hey, I can get college credits for free, I'm going for it, and may or may not be ready. And the colleges have continued to lower their threshold for entrance to the point where, as I mentioned to Mariah earlier tonight, 8th grade MCA score of 850, which is a passing score, could qualify you to take a college algebra course, okay? And we can't stop that. We can't say, no, that's not recommended. I don't think that student's ready. Through PSEO, the high schools can offer no restrictions. So we definitely have had cases where students have gotten into courses. If you do poorly in a high school class, and then you go on to college and you earn a degree, most of your employers will never ask to see your high school transcript, but they may ask to see your college transcript, right? So there's a chance for a student to sort of redeem themselves in this college environment. But when you have a 15-year-old enrolled in a college course through PSEO and do poorly on it, it's now on their college transcript. And that's something we want to try to avoid for students to make sure that they're really ready for it. And so when students fail those PSEO courses because they're a college student, we cannot know anything about their progress. So we don't have access at any point in time to how that student is doing within that course. And neither do their parents. The only one who has that responsibility and access is the student because they're a college student. So as students have struggled, this is a very common experience. As students have struggled, typically they're kids who've never struggled in the past. All of a sudden they're meeting these challenges. They're afraid to reach out for help. They're not likely to ask their parents because, hey, I've always been a good student. I don't know what's going on. And as they have, when those natural supports would come into place if they were in our classrooms, they're absent of that and they're online. We've had cases in which they've reached the end of the semester, parents weren't aware, school district wasn't aware, and the student failed the class, and there's little we can do. They may require credit recovery, and we have had students who reach the point of graduation, fail the PSEO course, and then can't graduate and have to attend credit recovery in the summertime after graduation. If a student is in a CIS class that's taught by our teachers, we have full access to their progress. We can communicate with parents. So for that purpose from the office side, we see the advantages of the CIS as well. Just in the fall of 2024, again, fairly common occurrence. I can't give you the exact because I don't have that pulled up here, but we did have students, 5 students who had a course failure or withdrawal. This number 3 here in the middle, students with a D or D minus, this goes to the transferability of that credit. So we do have students that take credits, that take courses and pass them with a D or a D minus, and many institutions will not accept that course and transfer. So that's something to keep in mind as well. That's essentially money wasted. So these are PSEO classes where we've paid for that course, but they're no longer transferable. The 5 credits failed is a total of 15 credits at a cost of $3,915. Not a massive number, but a considerable sum nonetheless. And those are courses that were paid for, which the students never earned the credit. One of the things that we're trying to do here at our high school, and I'm working with other schools and districts around outstate Minnesota, is we're trying to increase our college and the school's options, obviously because of the financial advantages it brings to the district, and the fact that it brings increased college credit opportunities to our students. So we are going to be looking in spring of 2025 at areas where we can increase our partnerships with other colleges and universities. University of Minnesota Duluth, University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and University of Minnesota Crookston and Morris, they have a different college in the schools funding mechanism or cost structure than do schools within in-state or MnSCU system. If you're in the in-state system, it's $3,000 or $3,300, whatever that number is. University of Minnesota Duluth, for example, charges $92 a credit. And there may be opportunities as we explore this for us to find ways to offer some courses through, especially smaller courses where it's a smaller student enrollment, through University of Minnesota Duluth or through Southwest Minnesota State, or increase CLC options, or look at other university partners. So we're gonna be doing that this spring, take a full menu of options, ensure that we can still have students earn an AA degree through CLC, and find out ways that we can save or cut costs, you might say, for college options. Another thing that we're looking at, Pillager and Pequot Lakes we're currently piloting a consortium. So we offer, right now we're offering Pillager the opportunity to enroll in our medical terminology class. Our medical terminology class had 13 students in it, and that's a undersized class. We opened the door for Pillager students to enroll. We're gonna try this out and see how it works. They have 10 seats. Going forward, we'll have a mutual sharing agreement where they'll open up course offerings to our students that we can't offer. They happen to have an attorney who's a business law attorney who teaches high school. What an awesome person to have. We can't find that. But then we could, our students could have the opportunity to take business law or intro to business by a CIS qualified instructor out of Pillager, and we could potentially share those course options. That's something we're looking to expand, and hopefully the legislature, that was part of my testimony, was there's ways to fund that. Hopefully the legislature is very interested in exploring those opportunities to expand those offerings in outstate Minnesota. And I think the final thing is we really have to work hard to educate our families and students about options. We're certainly not ever saying that PSEO is a bad experience or you should not have PSEO. There's definitely very realistic places where PSEO fits. What we're trying to educate people on is the fact that the high school is offering the same exact course for a greatly reduced cost to our district. Sometimes students have chosen a course because it's easier rigor-wise at the college. So we offer a class here with Miss Angie Klein, and she won't mind me saying this, but she is a rigorous teacher. She has high accountability, she preps kids well for college. And some students have said, yeah, but I can get it easier if I take the teacher at CLC, okay? I don't always have an answer to that, but what I will tell you is that most students have preferred to take the classes from our staff here. So can we offer an increased number of opportunities? Can we offer courses that align better with student flexibility, interests, online options? Can we increase the attractiveness of our CIS courses? So we've done some things. We started with a conversation with our Student Leadership Council. We went back to the Student Leadership Council with updates on what we're doing. We'll go back to the Student Leadership Council again and say, here's what we're looking at for the fall of 2025 into spring of 2026. What do you see? How can we improve the attractiveness of these courses? What are the options, aside from reducing the rigor?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? All right, I have a lot of questions because I wasn't familiar with this program, and I did watch your testimony at the state capitol. So my first question is, because I'm not familiar with this, was the legislation that was passed, are we required to offer PSEOs?
So we are not allowed in any way whatsoever to restrict PSEO. It is an option available to every student who's a resident of Minnesota.
Okay, and so I think that informing parents about this, like this presentation was very helpful. If we could have something like that for parents so that they could see, because do parents have to approve any of these classes that they take? I mean, could they pick something completely outlandish like basket weaving and then, I personally wouldn't want my kid wasting their time on something like that. So do they have to approve it at all, or they can just take whatever?
Once the student is admitted to the school in a traditional application process, that student is essentially autonomous as a college student, meaning that they can register for anything they want. I would say that a vast majority of our parents are heavily involved in that process of helping to guide their child and approve for the college credits.
And do these, because I'm thinking PSCOs are Minnesota specific, because I've never heard of them before. I took AP classes in high school, which was similar, it sounds like, to CIS, but you have to pass an exam. So do these transfer to other colleges, these credits, or is it just to CLC?
So PSEO is unique to Minnesota. There are other similar kinds of programs in other states, but Minnesota is extremely unique with their PSEO and the fact that it's fully funded. In many states, the families and students are obligated for a portion of the tuition. The credits earned are as transferable as any other college credit course earned through that institution.
And again, it sounds like we can't limit it in any way, so we cannot say that these cannot be online courses. Is that correct?
Correct. The format in which the student takes the course, we have no say over.
And then my last question is, so basically, were you petitioning the state to do away with the legislation that is basically opened it up to everything? Or were you petitioning the state to, are you wanting to limit it in some way? I mean, what can we do? Do we have many options besides just trying to make our CIS more attractive?
So I do not want to see PSEO go away. I still think that there's a really important avenue, and I'm not going to label the students in PSEO, but I will say that we have a number of homeschool families in which the public school system hasn't been a preferred choice, and PSEO is a really good option for them. And I will also tell you that I have had a number of students that have chosen full-time PSEO, and I have seen them be highly successful in that environment when they weren't quite so successful in our high school. So I do feel like there is still always going to be an avenue in which the opportunity that PSEO presents is the best opportunity for our students. I would say that it's less than 5%. We're approaching that 15 to 20% of our high school population enrolled in PSEO courses, and that is not what PSEO, in my opinion, was designed for. That's where CIS fits in. CIS really should be that option for a bulk of our students. And certainly when you take a look at the high cost per credit, being able to offer that at a much lower rate with our teachers is financially sustainable.
Do you mind if I jump in to answer that? I think one of the other things that we're trying to advocate for, especially Mr. Nelson, in our areas though, the cost of PSEO is heavily weighted in favor of colleges. So we've actually lost money on students, and we only get so much money funding per student. We're just losing, we get all that to colleges and more to colleges. And if they take athletics or do anything on our campus, we just don't get any money for it. So I think we're looking for changes in what formulas and the amount that they use as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, when you asked what was I advocating for, I was advocating for some lanes to be drawn, because PSEO is wide open. As one of the other testifiers said, it's the Wild West. Can we put in some guidelines and restrictions that then make it more clear for high schools on what those options are, for families and what those options are, and then certainly some restrictions that they just keep lowering the bar and broadening the opportunities, and the funding associated with that hasn't gone down. To Kurt's point, there's no incentive. We have a contract with CLC, but there's really no incentive for CLC or any other higher learning institution to negotiate, because if they don't negotiate, they get the funding directly from the state anyway. That makes sense. So we try to negotiate something that gives us a little bit of a tuition agreement that gives us a little bit of money in the end to support the counseling and the other things that go in with supporting students.
Other questions from the board? I had just a couple questions, and first of all, I appreciate you kind of we've talked about this a lot at the board. I think the CIS piece where all the laws changed, which really put us in a tough spot. It's great we've been able to staff get our staff to a point where we can continue to offer CIS. And I think PSEO is a great program. I think to your point, it's kind of evolved over time. And I think being outstate, we have a little bit of a disadvantage because we don't have a lot of choices, and we've kind of filled in with CIS, so I do appreciate that. But I think one thing that would be helpful, because I think some of the questions Mariah had, I think whether you've been in Minnesota or haven't, I know I did CIS in high school. Every state has a different version. The hard part about college that I think as a district is hard, we don't know. Like, I took my credits with me to Virginia, some transferred, some didn't, and that's just the nature of schools. You don't know if they're gonna transfer. But one thing that I think would be helpful, Mr. Nelson, is I think about like ninth grade orientation, and we know students kind of start to own their academic, their classes in high school, but I think for parents, some of the information you had on here I think would be helpful, just because sometimes, we're really good about educating our students about what's out there, which I think is great. But sometimes I think for parents understanding kind of what the options are so they can start having those conversations at home. And for some students, PSEO might be the right option. We know for some students maybe leaving this facility and going to a different one might be good, but the majority of them might be great to stay here. The other thing I was gonna suggest, it would be really great, because we've had so many students go through this program. As a parent who had one graduate with an AA, another one that almost had an AA, and one that's going towards an AA, getting quotes from those students on how they impacted not only their transfers, but I know my own kids have said, like, Klein helped them be prepared. And I think, getting some quotes from students who have gone through these programs, especially the ones in the school, to really speak to the teaching staff and what it prepared them for, also just might be helpful for parents to be able to see, like, oh, and students, because sometimes it's nice to be like, oh, that's somebody who went through here. But I appreciate the work. I mean, I know this is something I think we've, as a district, really tried to offer. I think for a lot of families, this is a great way to get some of your college paid for, or even come out with a degree that you can go right, into the workforce. But however we can help present this information to parents early and often, just so they can continue that conversation with what you guys are doing. But I appreciate, I'm sure you have 40 hours, 50 hours sitting, nothing to do, so I appreciate you taking the extra time to continue to advocate for the work we're trying to do for our students. So, thank you.
One added comment. Thank you for you and the staff. That's not as many districts are as lucky as we are to have forward thinking, so I wanna make sure I mention that. Just a couple quick questions. How many teachers at the school district here do we have that can teach CIS? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head. What I will tell you is that we have strategically targeted courses where we know we are gonna have high student request. I'm gonna answer that. I'm not gonna answer your question because I don't know the number, but I'm gonna answer that in another way. So one of the biggest courses that we have students taking is psychology. Fits a lot of areas, okay? I don't have a teacher that can teach psychology. I don't have anybody close, and I don't have anybody interested. And so going back to the consortia, what I've done is I've reached out to, that's a class that, 24 kids a semester will enroll in psychology. And it's a 3 or 4, I think it's a 4-credit class, so it's pretty expensive. So we reached out to peers and we said, they have someone teaching it, fully certified and qualified, can we, through a consortia partnership, offer this? And I mean, we're talking, this is gonna cost us less than $5,000. So significantly reduced expense to offer the same course to students. And so where I can't get teachers, I'm trying to find options that are much lower cost option.
That's awesome. And then, assuming the referendum and levy, those spaces that we're adding, this would adequately help in some of the CIS to have more space for these teachers to teach and bring in more students, maybe from Pillager and peers, to your point. So I think sharing that with our community and hearing, well, we're having students leave the campus, to go to PSEO, and we're building new space, that doesn't make sense. I think this is a great opportunity for us as board members and parents and teachers to say, hey, this additional space could help fuel the space for CIS. So just wanted to share that. And then is there any entry level criteria for CIS currently? I know you mentioned PSEO, it's kind of, you said the 8th grade math curriculum, it's Wild West. Is there a criteria for that for students? Is there a grade level or is that?
Yeah, so to step back to the PSEO, if I led you to believe that the only criteria is 8th grade math score, you have to have as a junior a 3.0 or a senior a 2.5, and then in math it's a 8th grade math score. And so what we do is we work a lot with our teaching, like in the math department, for example. So the math department will review students and say, this is the math track we recommend for our CIS classes, but CIS follows a similar type of thing of a 3.0 for a junior, a 2.5 for a senior, so those criteria are very similar. One of the things that you see in a CIS class is when students do get in and they're not adequately equipped, we can move them out and give them, we just finished the course for high school credit option. I have that flexibility because I know how they're doing. We have the conversation with students and families. When they're in the PSEO, I can't do it because I don't know their status.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any final questions?
Sure.
Tina?
I just wanted to send kudos to the teachers who have such high rigor that students would choose to go to CI or PSEO because they're lazy, you know? I just think that's a huge thing that we should be proud of, even though it might kind of backfire in a way. I've heard that many times, many years. You know, they don't want to take this course at the high school because it's too hard. Teachers do not lower your rigor. That's what we're here for.
Life is hard.
Yeah, life is hard, yes.
I would also say though, I think just to play off the PSEO a little bit, I think one thing that is beneficial for offering both is scheduling. And I do think one thing with Pequot is we do have a lot of options for students if you get stuck and you're trying to drive towards an AA, that we do have, and I think it's the good and the bad of a very small school. We have a lot of moving pieces. So I think knowing there are places where PSEO might be beneficial, but I always think, students in the cities, they can actually use PSEO for almost any of those spaces, those higher education, which, we're kind of limited to some of the resources, and having a smaller teaching staff, which we know when that rule changed, really put districts like us in a really hard spot. So I appreciate the forethought that went into getting folks ready. But no, I think the board appreciates the report. It's really great information. I know we've talked about it over the years, but good luck. Hopefully more good things to come.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
You can leave it there.
And, yeah, I know you're gonna be switching us out, Mr. Stump, but I don't know if you want to introduce who's coming up next for
I
the
will.
math presentation.
Yep.
Perfect.
They can make their way up and I will bring this up.
No. Oh, I do have to sit next to me.
You were not as good. That was really fantastic. Good. It's a regular. You just have to put
Okay, as we move on to the math presentation, it's surprising, Mr. Nelson, he talked about giving the board a quiz, so you can expect to see a quiz later on about PSEO. So thank you for that. The lay of the land, we've got Mr. O'Neill to your right. He's going to be talking a little bit about scheduling middle school in an action step, and then we've got our math committee here. This is a result of, if you remember, September, October meetings when we were looking at our MCE data like we normally do and said we just need a higher focus on math. So we've had a group be dedicated to this. We reallocated some funds to have a math leadership team, and we've got specific action steps that they'll go through with you. But the other thing that just in the back of your mind as I look at our strategic plan and our goals, we're going to have to relook at the personal growth and success. Number 2, grade level cohorts will increase students meeting proficiency standards by 5% from fall to spring. Since we switched from STAR assessment to FastBridge, we'll have to see if that goal is still meaningful or if we need to rework it. But that is a goal of this board, is to Pillar 3, personal growth and success. So we will revisit that, have some recommendation for you at the end of the year if we need to change it, but it is part of our strategic plan. With that, I will let Carrie Marin, our Director of Teaching and Learning, introduce her team.
Okay, so I was gonna say all that, but thanks for doing that. Not all of that, but some of it. So one of the things that we did was we developed a math leadership team. And we pulled someone from each school, so I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Allison Fallencheck. I teach 7th grade math.
I'm Katrina Moody. I teach high school math.
I'm Melissa Bukovic, and I'm 4th grade at Eagle View.
My name is Lisa Christensen, former English teacher, secondary instructional coach.
So we presented to the District Advisory Council earlier this month, and we took some of that information and changed it into action steps. So what we have for you is, based on that data, we have 8 action steps that we are in the process of working through. So we're all gonna kind of take turns speaking.
So action step number 1 is the creation of this team. So you're wondering, why is an English teacher? Because we're looking at that eagle eye perspective. We're looking at systems and structures, asking questions. And you can see the outline here. We have new math standards coming down from MDE. So taking a peek at that, looking at resources, including secondary and elementary intervention resources and enrichment resources. And just creating the foundation for the curriculum cycle. We have processes for when groups are on high cycle, and we wanted to take a little bit of extra time with math so that we don't just grab at the shiny thing. We want to make sure it's vetted, well researched, and aligned with the Minnesota state standards. Action step 1.2, I added this at the last minute on Friday because the secondary staff is looking at their grading practices. So as we look at the new standards, we also should be looking at our grading practices. I threw in a quote from the book study that we're reading. Many of you have had recent graduates or current students, or you are a student, and what their grade book looks like matters to students. They're good at math, they do the math, and so by shifting to a standards reference grade book, we feel this will help buy into the idea that it's not about chasing points, it's about the learning.
Must have that slide open. It's dark. One of the step 2 that we did, the administrators, Mr. Stumpf and myself, did some audits of 4th grade math, with 4th grade math teachers all the way through 12th grade and our special education teachers, and really just asked them a variety of questions about what they were doing, what they felt was working, where they saw holes. So just some of the background information that we got from that is that we are well aware that our teachers are working very hard. They're doing the best they can with the resources that they have. We see a dip that happens when students leave Eagle View and come into 5th grade, and that 5th and 6th grade, it kind of coincides with the move from Pearson and Vision, that was the curriculum prior to COVID, right? Prior to COVID. And math expressions, which came in 2020, I believe. The math curriculum in grades 7 and 8 that they've been using and supplementing, obviously, was Apprentice Hall with the 2009 date on it. 9 through 12th grade have a mixture of textbooks and teacher-developed resources. And of course, when you leave elementary school and go to middle school and high school, you go away from that block of math time from anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes, 65 to 75 minutes down to the 50-minute classes, which is definitely a reduction in time. So some of the things we found from our audits and our conversations with all the teachers was that number sense and fact fluency are definitely an area of improvement for our students. If they don't have that automaticity, we really need to figure out how to focus on that. We need, there is math intervention that's happening in the middle level, but we just need to be a little bit more, we have to be more focused in how we are doing our intervention. There are pull-up classes that are happening for our special education students for math, but a lot of the teachers are just pulling what they can find, and we really need it to be more grade level focused material that they're working through. We have misalignment with the resources that we have, so we're not, they're having to work really hard to fill in the gaps where their resource doesn't meet what the standards ask for. And so teachers have been realigning the scope and sequence of the math expressions that we have from K through 5, or is it 6? K through 6, sorry. Teachers really want to use data and make it meaningful, and the switch from STAR to FastBridge has been a difficult one for everyone, because we're learning what does this data tell us, and it's got a bit of a steep learning curve. So, but they're very committed to using their data, and as far as our high school goes, around 2009 was when the switch came from using a purchased curriculum into teacher-created resources, which has been difficult because then they really need a resource because we need to make sure we don't have gaps in what the curriculum is with the standards and consistency of vocabulary and really rigorous assessments. And the math teams need to really articulate what they want to do for accommodations and for instruction of students around students that don't have their math facts. And what we found is at every level, different teachers are using different things that they can pull from wherever because they don't have the resources to try and help students with other accommodations.
So we were able to take a couple of site visits. We went and visited Sartell in December, and we're gonna go visit Piers coming up here soon. And those were chosen by our administrators because of demographics and kind of looking at how similar they are to our school in certain ways, and the fact that their MCA scores are higher than ours, so they must be doing something right. So we wanted to be able to learn from them. So we went to Sartell to visit, and we were able to spend time in the math classrooms with the teachers, observing how they run their math classrooms, but we also had time then to sit down and talk with them, which was awesome. And we were able to just kind of see what's their rigor, what instructional practices are they using, and things like that. I think something that was really eye-opening about our visit was we all actually went back and sat in a room and were like, those classrooms look a lot like our classrooms. Like, how come we're not getting the results they're getting? And, you know, which on one side is really reaffirming because we are doing really good things here in Pequot, but on another hand, it's really frustrating because we're working really, really hard and kind of spinning our wheels. And so we were able to view some of the curricular resources that they've developed and used, and one benefit they have is, you know, there's 3 7th grade math teachers. I'm the only one. And so where they can take and they can kind of share some of the workload of building here in Pequot, we're all doing it on our own. And I come from a school where there were 3.5 7th grade math teachers, and we shared that load, and it really makes a difference. It's really hard to be a singleton. And so through that, we were just kind of able to see what they've produced and what they use, which was really helpful. When we go to Piers, coming up to, they use a curriculum that we are interested in previewing to see if it might be a good source for us to move forward with through our curriculum review next year. So in our meeting with Sartell, we are exploring a partnership, and actually I got to be on a call with Kurt today with the 7th grade math teacher, which was fantastic, and so thankful that they are willing to share with us. They've worked really, really hard to create many of the resources they have, and you know, they care about students, not just their own, but everybody's, and so we're going to be able to collaborate with them and share some resources, which should help some of the things that we're missing. And then we're just gonna continue to look at our math curriculum and try to figure out what we're missing, try to kind of fill in the things that maybe we've not been hitting, just to make sure that we continue to make progress into the 26-27 school year, which is when we will be able to adopt a new curriculum that hopefully better suits our needs. But the truth is no textbook company makes textbooks for Minnesota, and our standards are different than the rest of the country. So there's always going to be some degree of creation and pulling that we are going to have to do. But we're definitely hoping we can find something that's more modern, has more pieces online to support our students, and that better meets the standards here in Minnesota.
So action step 5.
I think that was me too.
Oh, that's you too. I was like, who's doing 5?
Unless someone else wants it. So action step 5 is this school year, elementary teachers are doing, they're deep in their REDAC training. And at the middle school and high school, we are taking some of those professional development days to really dig into the shift in our standards so that we have a really good understanding when those new standards are implemented, what's the same from our current standards and what's different, and so that we can start really digging in and thinking about what we need to change to be able to meet those standards that come forward. But also, we want to understand them as well as we can when we're looking through resources, because the last thing we want is before these standards actually are in place, that we have to choose a resource, and that if that resource doesn't meet our needs for those standards, that would be really difficult. And so we are utilizing the Compass Math Lead, which is kind of complicated, but I believe he works for MDE, but through Sourcewell, sort of. And so he is helping us develop the professional development that the teachers are going through. I shouldn't say he's helping us develop it, he's developing it, but it's been really cool. Mr. O'Neill made sure, and Carrie Murray made sure that the two of us were able to be in on a call with him and express what we thought would be the best way to go about it to help our teachers make the most progress towards those goals in the limited amount of time we have him. So it's been really good and really promising, and it feels good to be proactive about what's coming.
Okay, so step 6. So this is just kind of supplemental resources. As we've used in the past, we have IXL is one of the things we've used in our school, and we're piloting. There happens to be 4 of us total.
For the elementary.
For the elementary, I was gonna say there's more than that.
there's more
Okay.
than that, yeah.
So, 4 of us at elementary. You have to read the slide, Melissa. 2 high school teachers, 2 middle school teachers. And it's been kind of nice to compare that to what we love, we hold dear. Like, just to glean that information from students is really, really powerful. And these are just tools that we use in, supplementing our curriculum. It is a really great tool for us to be able to enrich the, whole group teaching, giving them some extra practice and work, and we can pull data from it instantly. This also opens up in the elementary setting, because of our block, that opens up the time where I can, we can be working with small groups and hitting each kid every day. So these tools, especially in my world, and I can't speak to middle school, I know your time's different, but they're essential. So having something that's valuable and not just a waste of, just busy work. I don't want that. I want something that my kids are gonna, and iReady does seem to, I'm really impressed with it so far. It's very much aligned with the MCA type questions. It has guided practice lessons that they have to follow, and then guided practice, and then quizzes, which then I get instant data, like instantly after they're done. We're exploring it, very new into it. Found out today, me and another teacher were looking and found out you can actually go in and assign actual teachings from, skills, standards. So that's gonna be really cool. But again, we just wanna be ready for, like she said, we wanna be ready for when the new standards do come down. Is this gonna help us supplement what we're doing? ST Math is only being piloted with 3 intervention teachers. Unfortunately, they weren't allowing any more seats.
They were a little more picky.
Yeah, but feedback from those teachers were, it was really, really a really cool conceptual way of kind of brain game working without, kind of like puzzles, where they have to figure it out without someone telling them, here's what I want you to do. So they've been excited to see how the kids are having to really think outside the box, which really, sometimes when kids struggle, those are the kids that are actually gonna do really well with those kind of puzzles, because that's just how their brains are working, and it's really fun to see that and the potential they could go.
And so we're just piloting some of these because we want to make a good, solid choice of what is the intervention or that extension piece, that as a supplemental piece that we want. And maybe it's not the same at every level, so that's why we have different levels. We have some high school, elementary, and middle working in the pilot.
So I'll speak to FastBridge. It's definitely a huge learning curve. Exhausting at times, trying to understand it, and just the perfectionist in all of us, we just want to know it now. Like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What am I seeing? We're not seeing, the growth is small. I mean, it's only been twice that we've given it, so we don't really have the data to really make a informed decision on how we feel like it's going and what it's doing. I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of work yet to that. I mean, I don't know if you guys wanna jump on that, but.
Yeah, we're just looking for more longitudinal data, right? Like this, we only have 2 data points, so, you know, it looks kind of flatline, but that kind of would also
But-
indicate what we have going with.
And I
our
already can tell
secondary.
you from what we were using before with star data, we had huge swings sometimes. You'd have hundreds of points or 50 points, and like, what does that swing mean? And how could you be there and jump to there? You're not seeing that as much with FastBridge, which I actually like because it seems to fit. Like, I can look at my kid and be like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Where when they're swinging huge dips, that is more confusing, I think. So I feel like it's maybe gonna be a little more accurate on what we need to hit and what we need to go in. And there's intervention pieces in there, and right now that's where we're really just beginning, that we can maybe pull from these data points and use our intervention teachers as well as classroom teachers to help hit those holes a little bit more targeted.
Action step 8 is.
So I get to talk master schedule, all right? So breakfast starts at 7:45, first bell rings at 8:20. We've got to feed them lunch, and then the school day ends at 3:15, excuse me. So what are you gonna do with all those minutes? In a middle school setting, you have to transition kids between content areas, so we have transition times. And when I got here in 2015, excuse me, I inherited a 7-period day. 50-minute class period, 5-minute passing, a quasi-homeroom environment called Patriot Time that was up against band and band lessons and things like that. And over time, our master schedule really hasn't changed much. We evolved the homeroom component a little bit to add in some more social and emotional learning and more post-secondary preparation. During the pandemic, we certainly blew up the master schedule to deal with everything from social distancing to mitigating class sizes and you name it. But right around 2019, 2020, our math data showed us that we also have a decline in math performance in our district. So up until that point, it sure felt like things were going okay. Right now, after putting in some strategic interventions last year that we made a commitment to as a building, we still didn't see the results that we wanted to see. So as we agreed upon last spring as a building leadership team, if we didn't get the results we wanted out of last year's efforts, we were going to dive into the master schedule. And we've done it. These are all proposed structures right now. Mr. Bankson asked the question, when can we anticipate this decision? And I said, let's shoot for February. Certainly, I could have made a decision in a vacuum by myself without any input from teachers, and I don't think that would have gone very well. So over the course of this entire first semester, we've lived in a conversation about our school day. And if to an outside perspective, walking in, just acknowledging where we allocate minutes, why we allocate minutes there, acknowledging that we're a shared staff, we utilize shared staff, so though many a day I wish we weren't connected to the high school and we could have complete autonomy and run a true middle school, we can't. But that is also a blessing because we can bring some shared staff experiences to our students. So we've got a little bit of a complicated formula. And keep in mind that we have about 145 kids in a grade. So those kids have to be poured into sections in a way that is tolerable. Right now, our class sizes in the middle school are right around 30. And we run the highest class sizes in the entire district, and we have been for quite a while, all right? Our current structures are around math, are 5 sections of math at 50 minutes apiece throughout the course of the average 5-day school week. That's 250 minutes of instruction. As of last year, as of semester 2, we implemented a 5th and 6th grade math interventions environment where kids that were pre-selected based on their STAR assessment scores, teacher recommendation, and some long-term MCA scores from grades 3 and 4 were compiled into a group where we created smaller class sizes, and they are working with a math interventionist. That year it was Sarah Crabb-Erickson, and also Krista Zemer, special education teacher, working with students that were identified on an every other day basis. So in our structures, we're an A-day, B-day school, so on an A-day a kid might go to art, on a B-day they might go to choir. We leaned in with those kids and said, hey, we value your math performance. Which practical art would you like to step out of? because your math performance is important. And we lean in on that conversation with their parents as well. So kids had a voice in which class they opted out of and opted into math interventions. I would say it's going really well. I'm excited to see the relationships that are being formed in that class, the progress monitoring that kids are doing of their own skill set. And what I've been kind of leaning in on is the asynchronous support, which is stuff where kids are not at grade level. They might be tackling a task that, you were talking about automaticity earlier. They might be tackling just general math fact fluency while their grade level peers are exploring slope, okay? But this is what the data tells us those students need, okay? So that was last year. By the end of the year, we went full scale grades 5 and 6. We adopted that rolling into the fall of 2024, this past fall. We are now campus-wide with those structures. So students in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 have access to that. Scott Ebnett, our business teacher and a K-6 licensed teacher, is also teaching math intervention in grades 7 and 8, partnering with Allison, and then also 8th grade teacher Kyle Spray. Working on gaps and working on growing those students and helping them to get to grade level is the goal of that group. While all that is spinning, we also have math labs. So our master schedule currently has a lot of outdoor opportunities. So in 5th and 6th grade, there's a 30-minute recess. In 7th and 8th grade, there's a 30-minute outdoor break. That outdoor break continued after the pandemic. Pequot Lakes Public Schools, at least in the middle school, is blessed with a very low behavior incident rate, and I think a lot of that is based on movement. But we have to prioritize back to those precious minutes we have in a school day. That's probably going to go away in 7th and 8th grade. Or if it's available, it might be available if the kids have demonstrated that they have the freedom to go choose something like that. In other words, their math performance is adequate enough that they've demonstrated mastery. We're not there yet in our official decision making, but our math lab right now in each of the 4 grade levels varies from anything from a completely opt-in environment in grade 8, where Mr. Spray reported to me today that he had 28 kids, I want to repeat this, 28 8th graders opting to skip out on a beautiful day like today to get math support. That's pretty awesome. And then we have also other structures that are going on where kids are invited in, made mandatory to attend that daily intervention, and we don't run it on Fridays. And it varies a little bit by grade level. The proposed structure is pretty simple, is to expand math minutes. So back to that A-day, B-day structure, our proposed structure for grade 5, 6 is going to be taking a look at either looking at a specific teacher that is licensed that might teach social studies and math in an every other day format. Doing that would expand math minutes by 100 to 150 minutes per pupil per week. We could also explore, again, this is in the provisional stages, we could explore using our K-6 license to have like a dual classroom environment where we have a math teacher and another math teacher that also teach a skinny or a smaller segment of social studies. Both those settings have strengths and weaknesses. Both have kind of their ability to create narrow options for students or broad options. Each one has pros and cons. But back to what Allison was talking about, we expand our ability to actually collaborate with a colleague. We create a professional learning community in a way that we don't have one right now, which is a huge add to the 5-6 system. And then in grades 7 and 8, we are working through a couple options, one of which is just getting rid of that outdoor break and turning it into a tier 2 intervention opportunity for all students. And then also on Wednesday, I just pushed out an image for a proposed 6-period day. For those of you who are historians in the district, before my time, we were on a 6-period day at one time. So what's different between a 6-period and a 7-period day? A 6-period day is 60-minute classes and less transitions. A 7-period day is 50-minute class periods and more transitions. Again, both have pros and cons. But I appreciate the patience of our teacher group, go slow to go right. Again, we could have made this decision in some kind of top-down environment, but I don't think it would have been nearly as successful as what we're rolling out. And then I'm gonna finish with our Compass resource is going to be working with our math department next week to talk about what are we gonna do with this additional time.
So that's a lot, and, so as a leadership team, these are like some of the things that we're gonna focus on. So like, we kind of mentioned throughout the thing, we have a curriculum review coming up, we have new standards coming in. So how are we going to do that? And one of the big pieces of our new standards is shifting away from the procedural stuff of math that we all learned and kind of going more into that conceptual understanding and that problem-solving basis. And so how are we gonna make that shift? What curriculum's gonna help us make that shift and help like eliminate that memorization of processes? With that curriculum, like with the audit, we haven't had a lot of alignment K through 12. And so trying to get some sort of curriculum that has the same vocabulary, it keeps spiraling back so kids keep reviewing concepts and they keep learning it. They didn't just learn it one time and then they wait till the next school year to like relearn it again. But it just becomes more ingrained and has a bigger meaning than like just the process of math. In whatever building it is, Mike talked and Allison talked about intervention in the middle school, we have that. We are working on doing that in the high school. What does that look like? Does iReady help us? Do those things help us? The same thing with Melissa said down in the elementary, what types of interventions and how we're gonna use them. Using our technology, hopefully a new curriculum will allow us to create more things, because right now as singletons, we are recreating everything. We differentiate in our classroom, we have to create all three of those levels when there's curriculums out there that can help us. So as soon as we kind of get that, it helps, makes it easier, more time efficient for us. And then math programs that will help students on an IEP, what does that curriculum look like, and keeping that in mind as we go through this process.
And Mr., do you have a comment before we open it up?
I do.
Okay.
Or what? Is that
No,
okay?
go ahead.
Okay, I have two quick comments. You know, we got student school board reps, and you know, most of you have children in our school, so just wanted to caution when you ask questions, just try to stay at a level that doesn't dig down to a teacher level. We all have different experiences with the teacher, and you're just trying to look at curriculum and those, even though we have outstanding teachers, and so I would just direct questions to teachers, specific ones if there's classroom questions. And then number two, we shared FastBridge data with you, not because we want to go back to that slide and dig into our data, we're still trying to understand it, but it was just a representation of data that we are needing to look at. So I would prefer not to go back to that slide because we're still trying to understand it, they're still trying to invest time in it. So the purpose wasn't to say, here's exactly where we are, it's just, we're looking at it and we'll come back to you later.
Yeah, and I was gonna add on the caveat for board members that are newer to the board, because I know we have a few people that are, the way curriculum review works, you guys are doing the research before we get there next year.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to understand this is a lot of researching, investigating, piloting, because next year, this particular curriculum does come into the curriculum review cycle. So just for everybody, we go through this cycle, I think, is it 7 years, 5 or 7 years?
6.
I knew it was close.
Close.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Somewhere in there. But as we open it up for questions, I just think it's important what Mr. Stump mentioned, and just kind of just setting the stage. This is a lot of updates for us as a board as to the process. So I will pause there and open it for questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Pamela?
You'll likely be glad to know I was not going to ask about the FastBridge. Actually was not on my questions for today, so next time it will be. Can I go back to, again, EduSpeak, and you gotta help me out sometimes. Standards reference gradebook. I need to understand what that is.
Sure, so we teach to the standards, right? The elementary report card is a perfect example of a standards reference gradebook. Once you get to secondary, the gradebook is much longer. You know, you're looking at 30 assignments, maybe 40 assignments, and you see something like chapter 2 test or the night essay, right? And so the idea around standards reference gradebook is breaking those down. Instead of calling it the night essay, I've got a rubric where you can see like, oh, you're still struggling with grammar, but wow, your thesis statement rocked. And so it clearly articulates to the students, the parents, the teachers, the data, like what does the student know, what don't they know? And so we're all on the same page. So it's a shift in grading practices.
I was gonna say, it also works to kind of separate student behaviors from understanding, so like, for example, if kids turn all their homework in late, they shouldn't necessarily fail, because that was a behavior and it's not actually a reflection upon how well they understood the math and how well they could capitalize or, you know, show their learning. There are certainly ways where when kids are not getting their work in on time, that we can hold them accountable to that without penalizing them in the grade book. You know, like, you need to come into math lab or things like that. So it also tries to make the grade book really true to their level of understanding versus other factors that sometimes can seep in, like participation points can be one that can be kind of tricky.
Can I answer your question directly? So the elementary, 4-3-2-1, pretty typical in elementary. The middle school and high school is not moving to a 4-3-2-1. If that was like the crux of your question, I can see. I can see where board members are going. That's why it's standards reference. There'll still be an A, B, C, D. There'll still be some accumulation of points, but it's within a standard. Am I saying this right?
It also manifests like, say if your child has to retake an assessment, they may not retake the whole thing, they might only retake the chunk that they did not demonstrate mastery in. So that'd be another example.
Yeah.
So do I make it like, this sounds like more work for a teacher, in a way, right? And maybe elementary is kind of already there, but.
I can actually speak to that because prior to working here, when I worked in Rochester, the idea to me seemed like so overwhelming, but I had this really great teacher mentor that I worked with who had been using it. He was like, you have to try it, you have to jump in. And I did. And as a teacher, I had never better understood my students' strengths and challenges. And I was much more efficiently able to address those areas with them because I understood, like, it wasn't chapter 1 test, it was order of operations, simplifying expressions or solving one-step equations. And so it can really help you narrow down to the skill. The actual entering in the grade book, like sometimes one test would be 3 grades. So that took me a tad bit longer, but still so much more efficient in going back and reteaching those kids.
Thank you.
And if I could
Yeah.
share, Madam Chair, it's more timely feedback, right, for students. They're understanding exactly where they're excelling and maybe where they're not.
Sometimes, yeah. That would be the hope.
And I mean, in the perfect world, if you move to the next grade and a teacher can go back and see a standards-based or standards reference. Yep, I'm like, there was the difference, yeah. But standards reference, in theory, we could be like, well, I understand where maybe they're gonna struggle with algebra 1 because this area was an area that maybe they didn't finish the grade as strong. Yeah, the standards reference, is that a normed word in grade books? Okay, you hear standards-based much more, so, but we're not moving to standards-based as a district or middle or high school.
Correct.
Just for math, standards reference?
No, secondary,
Oh, we are going to secondary, all courses.
we're moving towards it. Right now, we're engaging in a book study to learn about what it
In
means.
varying degrees of progress.
Yeah.
So that might be a different school board presentation.
I agree.
So let's just pause on that. Okay,
Glad I opened that
sorry,
up.
yeah, that was good.
Maybe
Okay,
we'll take-
yes, go ahead.
Mr. O'Neill, just 2 quick questions. We are talking about math, so I understand that, but with the proposed schedule, and I think I see it here, but I wanted to just clarify. It says, let me get to slide 11. Math lab / academic support. So this would also be for our reading strugglers? Would this also be like this?
So current structures, so envision our 8th grade team.
Yep.
Mr. Spray stays in 4 days a week, Mrs. Fisher stays in, I wanna say also 4 days a week. And then the other team members that take on the other responsibilities of the rest of the student body. So, you know, movement opportunities, indoor, outdoor. And these are all things that logistics and accountability of where you're supposed to be are all things that have to get fleshed out if we approach change in how we use those minutes.
So it really does include all intervention support.
Mhm.
And I wrote down outdoor break, because I do feel like you've been a very big advocate for that too. Kids need movement, and just wanted to make sure that still fits what you see as a priority.
Certainly we do. So maintained in the 5-6 structures, and this is not a math discussion, this is an ELA discussion, but when those kids go to wellness, those kids are going, and they probably report home that they're having a great time in wellness, but the reality is half of the rest of their class is staying back and getting more focused ELA support, which creates smaller structures, more one-on-one intervention opportunities, and we're looking to expand those interventions in ELA as well, but that's, again, a topic for another time.
I should know this too, 7th and 8th do have gym, they have PE class, so they are
So
still getting
unique,
movement.
a reminder that unique with 5-6 is that ELA is taught in a block, where reading and writing skills are somewhat teased out separately, whereas in the current 7-8 structures, ELA goes into right now, 50-minute ELA block setting, and then we add on PE as a core every day. Again, which has validity, and I've been in this profession long enough to hear the ebb and flow of that, and our current predicament is math achievement, so we better pendulum swing towards supporting it.
Did you have other questions?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Other board members?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Alright, I know it's getting late, but I got some questions. So yeah, I did have a question about the standards reference gradebook, and it sounds like we're gonna maybe have a whole nother presentation on that. It might be helpful if we could see an example of what that would look like outside of 4-3-2-1 equal view example, so we can kinda understand what that is. And then on one of the slides, it said that our curriculum changed in 2009 to teacher created and not like a bought curriculum. Who made that decision? Was that like a state decision? Was that?
Oh, absolutely not.
That was a school decision?
And that was prior to.
And is that when we start to see the dip in our math?
No.
No. Alright, cause what we were talking about is in elementary, they leave at like a 70-ish% proficiency, and then when they go to middle school, they drop down to 37%. I mean, that's a huge, so it's gotta be, I would think, the curriculum, because our kids aren't getting dumber. They're just not being taught what the state wants.
No, and I can maybe answer your question. The state has a natural decline from 4th to 5th grade. You can see it on the state, and it usually, depending on the year, is about 10 to 15 percentage points, because the test is just different. And the test is different for every grade, but the state is clearly different from 4th to 5th grade. So is there a natural decline in most school districts across the state? So, no, and I would agree with you. That's why we're looking at our curriculum. We know that likely has the most impact on student achievement is increasing instructional time and ensuring our curriculum is better aligned to standards.
And then for the high school, I'm gonna ask you, how much work is on the computer for math, would you say? Is it a lot?
Well, it depends on the classroom, but we do not have an online curriculum unless we've created it. And usually we all have created some form of something from COVID and have that as a resource. But I would say it's different at every level. So there's some online, like videos, resources, that kind of stuff, and then there's a lot of paper, pencil, that type of stuff as well.
Because I was wondering if the decline could also be in part to utilizing the computer more, in the higher levels.
The other part in high school is it's not all just algebra. There's algebra, there's geometry, we have different concepts. Also middle school, we start to become more abstract thinking, which is also part of a decline, and it's not like numbered based, it becomes your reasoning type of stuff. And so that is part of it as well.
And then, this is what I wrote down when I looked at this. So on this slide, it says, this includes eliminating the memorization of processes. But then at the next one, it says, stronger focus on academic vocabulary and processes. It seems a little contradictory, like, are we getting away? And we've talked so much about, the automation of math, and now it sounds like we're trying to go away from that.
So there's some, sorry, can I do it?
No.
Okay. With our new standards, we have that procedural stuff. There's still a value to that procedural stuff, but we have focused so much, we have kids that come in that have just focused on that and they don't know why it works, they just know the trick. And so then when they come into higher level thinking, it doesn't make sense. And they make mistakes because it's abstract and they're just trying to do a trick. And so it happens at almost every single level with our middle school. I see it in my high school, I see it in my college algebra class. It's because they've learned this trick and it doesn't always work as you get to the higher level stuff. And so there's still processes that they have to understand, but with that 3-tier piece of our new standards, it's processes, conceptual understanding, which is the piece that needs to be greater, and problem solving. And it needs to all be the same, and we have spent so much time on this side.
And I think the key word, I think what maybe we meant by that was the memorization of these processes. Rather than worried about memorizing, you need to learn processes, of course, right?
Yeah.
Understanding processes of why they work versus just memorizing the trick, I think is where we meant. Because obviously processes can't go away.
Yeah, that was my big concern, cause, you know, me personally, I wanna know how to do it before I learn why, cause I don't care why I'm doing it if I can't do it.
Right. No, the processes are always gonna be there, but teaching that just to memorize it and rely on no other. So as soon as you forgot it, if you've memorized it, you now have no skills to figure it out then.
It's just answer getting. There's no reason behind it. It's
But are
just
we
like,
still focused on memorizing like our facts, like for multiplication and stuff?
3 times 4.
Yeah.
But
That also
understanding
is a
that
conceptual thing, because they have to be able to see those numbers and be able to take tens and pull numbers and divide it out. And so bringing that, yes, it is memorizing it, but they do it conceptually, because they have to see those numbers and
To
move
see the
them.
groups.
Yeah, see the groups and move them around.
And we've worked a little on math manipulatives, and I know our elementary staff, but that's part of using a manipulative, so students can actually see what's happening and manipulate it, so they can understand why 4 times 3 is 12. Memorization, awesome. And some students still need to see it to make sure that it's not abstract, it's concrete sequence.
Thank you.
Can I say two more things? You brought up some great points. I will just make sure we're all have the same understanding. So when we met with high school teachers, and did we meet with, I forget if we met with you together or all
Separately.
I think the interesting part that teacher created, back to your question, is from our understanding, when we talked to those teachers, again, some of them weren't here back in that era, but that was not a teacher asked, that was a district, nope, you do your own. So I would say that's more on the district, that's clearly not on the teachers, that part of it. And what the cool part is, I was thinking that we met with them separately, pretty much verbatim, they're all like, we want a standard curriculum across. So they're asking for it, because again, when you saw the first slide, our teachers are working hard and trying to meet students, 100% agree. That's probably putting it mildly that they're working hard. So that, you know, they're asking us to partner and get some resources. So I appreciate the work that they have put in. I've said this once, I'm gonna say it again, secondary, we're not moving to a standards-based report 5 and 4, 3, 2, 1. Because I just seen it play out in other districts. I know, you know, the drama and controversy that creates, so that is not the path that we're taking in standards reference, and we will bring forward a different presentation.
Yeah, and that'd be helpful. And I also think, just to note, you know, I think the 2009, it's good to note that, but I think a lot of these things that we've noticed were almost 9 years, you know.
Yep.
It was significantly later, and I appreciate us diving in. Some of those things, I think the Minnesota State Standards misalignment with some of those other curricular resources. So I appreciate you guys doing the resource. One just quick question I had, with Fastbridge, are we doing that 3 times a year? And are we still doing 12th grade?
12th grade, so Fastbridge we did K-8.
Okay.
And then we had some teachers that just wanted, so we had a 9th grade math teacher that wanted to do it.
Because we're doing intervention.
Because
we have an intervention.
Didn't we do STAR in the high school though?
STAR was in the high school.
So Fastbridge is just K-8 now?
It was K-8 for this year.
This year, got it.
And actually, yeah, and I don't think that
The
they.
9th and 10th grade math teachers administered it this fall, but the purpose of the screener is to identify kids who have gaps in their
Right.
learning. And so
I just know that was a big change from a few years ago, so
Yes.
I just hadn't heard an update on that, so thank you.
It was a big change on the student user side too.
Yeah.
I've heard a few
Acclimated to it.
comments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my child's.
I
okay,
bet,
yeah, I just, the grade level
And
and
so
where,
that's why we just know, we're so early in just the implementation of it and kids getting comfortable with it, cause it's very different.
yeah, no, I know it's always hard when you've been doing, we went from MAP to STAR to FastBridge, so a lot of changes. Other questions? All right, well, I wish you guys luck as you continue to pilot.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to hearing more,
We're
but thank you.
working we're a hard-working group here.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Just give Mr. Stump a moment to reset, but the next item that we are moving to is the elections communication report. Mr. Stump, when you are ready, I will let you take that away.
We launched the website last Friday. Email went out to all parents and staff. And then we also have press releases to the newspapers that were sent out on Friday directing our public to our website, to Patriot. I should have it memorized.
Vision.
Yeah, is it Patriot-Vision?
Yeah. Patient dash.
Okay, to our website. Yes, patriot-vision.org, which includes our tax calculator. Website up and running, that piece of it, and then we also have worked with RAP Strategies and created 2 handouts, which I gave every board member a hard copy. This is what I will be using in most presentations, are these 2 handouts. It looks a little bit like last year. We again tried to use the 4 buckets in the plan. And then I think our community, in their response, asked for a breakdown of what the 55 million is. So that's where you get the second sheet, an actual breakdown of the buckets and the big ticket items within each bucket. So tried to respond to what we heard from the Morris Leatherman survey results, both on a better breakdown, communication on if it doesn't pass, or what's the consequences, or what happens if it doesn't. So just tried to update our information and make sure you have these materials. I'll stress to the board too, if you have a group of friends that meets and you've got 2 or 3 people that have questions, feel free to invite. I'm gonna make myself available as much as I can over the next 2.5 months to meet with 2 or 3 people or meet with large groups. And of course, I've got a list of 30 or 40 community organizations, but I'm always willing to, meet outside of those organizations as well. And we're piloting a group of people that we're bringing in for a tour during the school day, which it's not the best. It's good that they can see students and see some of the struggles that we have when actually we have people in our buildings, but then we don't, trying to balance that with, students being in our building while we're trying to have some academic learning happen as well. So piloting that next week with the group, and I'll keep board updates as we go through this.
Perfect.
I'll open
Any
taking questions.
So I would ask if you do have questions, touch base with Mr. Stump.
Yep, perfect.
We will move on. 4F is just an FYI for board members. I appreciate those of you that sent me notes on the committees and assignments, so you can see those inside the board agenda. And just as a reminder for everybody who's newer, we do redo those yearly, so just FYI, but those will be the committee assignments. And I think one of the biggest things on there is sometimes we do have ad hoc committees, which right now we currently do have one, which is the communications committee. But periodically ad hoc committees will come up and we will assign those as appropriate, so. All right, Mr. Stump, it is your turn for your report.
I have one thing to report. Again, COPS grant funding, we received whatever it was, 400-some thousand. We have started to tap into that. We've ordered a new high school office door, the door that comes into the building, and we can better secure that and buzz people in and out. So that's on order. Bus cameras, I'm waiting on a $30,000 grant to help offset some of those costs. Can never get enough grant money. So that was supposed to be at the beginning of January. It should be this week. And then working through some bus building cameras, there was some money in the grant to dedicate for more cameras. We had a huge upgrade a year ago, and we can have a couple more spots. now covered, and then we are ordering doors as well, both exterior and interior doors, for better security, ones that are just need to be replaced, all that covered through the grant.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Stone? All right.
I have,
Oh,
did
sorry,
you
Dina.
say exterior and interior?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, because I know the keying is quite an issue,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Any other questions? All right, well, we will move on to our action items, which I will be starting with our, I'm sorry, not the action items, consent agenda. We're gonna be starting with the consent agenda, so I do need a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Motion by Pamela?
That was Ross.
Oh, Ross. I heard, okay, both
All
voices.
wrestling for it.
Dina had that exception.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yep.
Everybody sounded the same there all at the same time. Okay, I've got a motion by Ross, second by Dina. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Wait, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can I ask one real quick question, or?
I think this one, there's no separate discussions
Okay.
unless we remove it.
Okay, no problem. I'll
Okay,
just-
sorry, just standard practice.
It's fine.
No?
Yes, although I would say typically you'd want to remove an item before you'd ask, you ought to remove any items and then ask for a motion, so maybe in
Yeah,
this
so I
case,
guess if there
in
is-
this case,
yeah.
I would say maybe it's appropriate to ask a question
Yeah.
for that.
And it's super quick.
Yeah.
Is this the personnel update, meaning that we've only had 2 teachers work on the early retirement?
Yes,
Okay,
yep,
thank you.
that's exactly.
Okay.
right.
That's it.
Yep, and next time I'll just remind, pull
Yep.
it off. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now we're moving on to action items. So we do have our fiscal year 25 budget revision, which was presented earlier in the meeting. I do need a motion to approve the FY 25 budget revision as presented.
So motioned.
Motion.
Mariah and then me.
Okay, Mariah, seconded by Amy. Any discussion? Any discussion? And any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to letter B. I need a motion to approve the contract with Crow Wing County for election services for the April 8th, 2025 special election as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Pamela,
Second.
second by Amy. Any discussion?
I will just add, this is standard for the school district partnering with Crow Wing County. They've been a great partner to work with.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? If not, I'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next I'll need a motion to appoint election judges for the 2025 special election as on file in the Crow Wing County Administrative Services Department at the rate of $25 per hour for head judges and $20 per hour for others who serve, and to authorize the Crow Wing County Administrative Services Director to fill any vacancies that may occur.
So moved.
Motion by Amy,
Second.
second by Pamela. Any discussion? Any questions or discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we're moving on to a resolution to adopt, we need to adopt the resolution to approve the establishment of an absentee ballot board. Motion by Ross. Second by Dina. Any discussion?
Again, standard for hosting a special election.
Perfect. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, we're gonna take a roll call vote. I will start with Mariah.
Aye.
Pamela?
Aye.
Dina?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries by a 6-0 vote. All right, moving on to letter E, I need a motion to adopt the resolution amending resolution relating to determining the necessity of issuing general obligation bonds and approving a capital project levy authorization and calling a special election thereon as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Pamela,
Second.
second by Ross. Any?
I will
Yes.
provide a little context. So we just entered a contract with Crow Wing County to hold the election. So this is saying, now that they're hosting the election, they're taking care of absentee ballots, which technically we wouldn't have approved last month anyway because we hadn't had a contract with them. So now we've approved, you called for a special election, that was the first step, great, we just kept it in the district, knowing that this month we partner with Crow Wing County, and this is the result of that partnership that we're coming back, so. Technically, nothing is changing, that we're still working with Crow Wing County.
Okay. Questions or comments or discussion? Any questions on the motion? Okay, this will also be a roll call vote. Mariah?
Aye.
Pamela?
Aye.
Dina?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries by a 6-0 vote. Okay, moving on to letter F, we need to adopt the resolution directing the administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs and positions and reasons therefore as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Pamela,
Second?
second by Amy. Mr. Stump, do you just want to remind everybody on this one?
Would love to. This is, again, a standard item, comes before you annually every year, just directing us to look at our budgets, and if we have to make any budget adjustments or staff reductions or program reductions, we bring it back to this board.
Are there questions or discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I mean, obviously I haven't been on this board, so I read this and I was very concerned about, is this just a recommendation? We're just giving you the power to recommend?
Yeah. There's a state statute out there that pertains to some bargaining units that the board has to have this resolution if we're gonna make any cuts later. So it's just one of the, I would say, very typical of boards, I actually see some boards just do it at their January organizational meeting, just throw it in there. So yes, it just says we are looking at all options. We'll bring back any information to this board for your decision making.
Other discussion, questions?
Maybe just, that's a good question. Again, we'll probably focus on this referendum between now and April 8th, so don't expect to see much on fiscal year 26 budget until after that April referendum. Might be some enrollment update, but very minor. Our focus is going to be on getting information out, and we'll behind the scenes work on the budget and have something to present to you in April.
Other questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, we will take a roll call vote. I'll go backwards this time. Amy?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Dina?
Aye.
Pamela?
Aye.
Mariah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, I'm just gonna pull up my donations. I need a motion to adopt the resolution accepting donations as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Amy,
So moved.
second by Dina.
Chair Bowles and do you mind if I make one comment?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, you'll see the first two, maybe you've seen before, the COPS grant you've seen before, but I think we realized as a business office, we haven't necessarily been putting those on here, not for any other reason besides we just take some of those in, so I think this is a change in our practice that you technically should be approving them. So even though we got the funds before, had access to them, we're going back to some of these that we had last year that should have been on the board agenda. So this is a change in our practice.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, and I do think it's nice for the public and the board to be able to see that amount there, so that's nice. I'll just read these off quickly. Our donor, these are our district accounts. Department of Labor and Industry, which is an OSHA Workplace Safety Grant, was $5,000 for bus cameras. The U.S. Department of Justice, which is the COPS grant, $327,429 for safety projects. The Five Wings Arts Council, which we actually have seen on here before, $3,200 for the ECFE 50th year celebration. Kenneth Henke, $1,000 for GLAPA microphone packs and receivers. The next few donations are from the Pequot Lakes PTA, $571.50 for 8th grade field trip busing, $315 eSTEM books and read-along, or for read-along, $780 kindergarten social science, and $240.45 breakfast buddies, donuts, and coffee. So we appreciate the PTA for those. Pequot Lakes Association of Crow Wing County, $2,500 for the 6th grade field trip to Long Lake, Pelican Lake, thank you. Patriots Activities Club, $3,000 for football state sweatshirts. Pequot Lakes Gridiron Club, $3,279, also for Pequot, or for football state sweatshirts. These next two are also from the Gridiron Club, $8,664.25, football charter buses, and $619 football award plaques. So we thank everybody for those district donations in the district account. These next ones are designated as student activity fund account donations. The Patriot Activities Club, $1,800 for the Spanish club trip. Ideal Community Service Organization, $2,000 for the Spanish club trip. Pequot Lakes Dairy Queen, $302.65 for high school student council. These next donations are all for the robotics team. Klaus Stamping Company, $500. PFS Design LLC, $500. Lexington Manufacturing, $500. Magnum Research Inc., $1,500. And Cuyuna Regional Medical Center, $500. So we thank everyone for our January donations. Do I have any comments or questions from the board? Any questions? Any questions? All right, this is also going to be a roll call vote. Amy?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Dina? Pamela?
Aye.
Mariah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The resolution passes 6-0. Mr. Stump, I know we've talked about February 3rd. Do we want to discuss that now? Is that?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of presentations tonight. I think, thank you. And I think because of that, the work session next week is not necessary. I've heard from the board that standards referenced might be a future presentation. I'm not sure if February is the next date. I guess we'll have to work internally, but no, that's on our list. We'll bring it back to the board at some point to share that information. But again, February 25th is actually the 4th Monday because the 3rd Monday is President's Day, so it's pushed back a week as a reminder.
Perfect.
So no meeting next week, February 3rd.
We'll cross that off your sheet. And any other announcements that you have, Mr. Stump?
I don't think so.
Okay. We will go ahead and take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Pamela,
Second.
second by Amy. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.